Hello, welcome to my video. Today I'm going to review the book 1984 by George Orwell. I have a lot of thoughts about this piece of literature. So many thoughts, but I want to preface whatever I say with that it's just my opinion and that I don't hate this book. It might seem like that by the end of this video, but I really don't. I have some really genuine, thought through points to make, and I do have some positives as well, so it's not just going to be me railing on this piece of literature, because I know it's very special to a lot of people, so I just wanted to just preface that. I also took a lot of time to thinking about how I wanted to review this, because I'm aware that a lot of my reviews are coming from a modern perspective, from someone that didn't grow up in 1940s, 30s, 20s as Orwell did, and where that some people feel like it is not fair to critique classics from a modern perspective because it's not the same as the perspective of the writer, if that makes sense. And I thought about that a lot, and I've actually decided to do a separate video about how and whether we should critique classics, modern classics, from a now present modern lens, even though the term modern is relative, because at the time that this book was released it would have been the modern times then, and we're modern now, but 10 years ago was modern and it's not modern anymore. It's all relative, isn't it? So I'm going to put my thoughts of that into a different video, but for now I just want to focus on 1984. So this book was published in 1949 by George Orwell. It is written in third person, and we follow the character of Winston Smith, and even though it's written in third person, it's still very much Winston's perspective. We still see the book through Winston's perspective. His opinions are laid in throughout the book, so it doesn't feel like there's like a separate narrator narrating Winston's experience. It just feels like we are following Winston himself and what he's going through. So 1984 takes place in Oceania. So I'm gonna keep looking down because I wrote notes so that I got this like right. So Oceania is made up of superstates, including the Americas, the Atlantic Islands, I think, the British Isle, and Australia. Oh, and South Africa. Not South Africa, the southern part of Africa. I'll find a picture of a map and put it up so you can get a visual of this, because I found this confusing reading the book and I'm trying to figure out where it was being spoken about. So I found someone created a map of the world. So Oceania is made of all these states, but Winston lives in London in Airstrip 1, which is what we would call England. So Oceania is a totalitarian, I'm going to struggle with these words, totalitarian, fascist, collectivist society, basically. It's an authoritarian society. It's not great. And the government is called the Party, and it has total control over Oceania and its citizens. To give an example, to put some context to this world, the society that the people live in, I'm just going to try and explain it. So the Party, which is everyone basically, consists of 3 different classes. You have the inner party, which is like the upper class. They're the ruling class, they're the ones that are in charge, they live more luxurious lives. Yeah, they kind of set the rules and they are the authority of the society. You have the outer party, which is the middle class, which is what Winston is a part of, and they very much the worker bees, I guess, of the society. And then you have the proles. Proles is obviously short for proletariat. They are the working class. They are seen as basically the equivalent of animals. They are the only ones that actually have freedom in the society, because no one cares about them, what they do or what they think. So they kind of just are insignificant. They're just sort of left to do their own thing, have their own families, do what they want. So all members of the outer party are under constant surveillance. I mean, like, constant surveillance, like they have telescreens in their houses that constantly watch and listen to their every move, not just in the houses, everywhere. They're constantly being listened, they're constantly being watched. Even when you go to the toilet, when you sleep, when you have a bath, there is not a time in your life where you are not under surveillance, and that reinforces the rules that they follow. You are not allowed to have free thought or free speech. They all wear the same clothes. It's a very oppressive, very oppressive, but it's just they're normal. To have your own thoughts is a crime. To speak against the party is a crime. To not follow the rules, to not follow the norms is a crime. A crime that can lead to you being taken to the Ministry of Love and being tortured, killed, so public executions, hanging, shot, or just disappeared. And the way this society, this world is governed is super fascinating, and that's one thing I do like about the book, and I will get into my likes and dislikes later. So the leader of this society, of this party, is Big Brother. He's this like god-like figure people are in love with, that they worship him. He's not even human, it feels like. And like on posters and under telly screens there's the phrase "Big Brother is watching you." Obviously Big Brother was a very famous reality show, obviously inspired by this. So it's more than just like a watchful eye. He's the leader. They have like, he's just, yeah, this, it's just this incredible presence. He almost doesn't feel real. This society has no pleasure in it. Even marriage is something that is not like a right or a pleasure. You do not marry someone that you love. If you show interest in a person, you will not be allowed to marry them. Everything is controlled to the nth degree. And all the people in the society live by the motto, or the doctrine, war is peace, freedom is slavery, and ignorance is strength. And that doesn't say everything about the society. That gives you some background into the society, so you can have an idea of what it's like here. So as for the sort of synopsis of the story, there might be some spoilers, by the way, in this review, and also I actually do want to say trigger warning, because I'm going to be mentioning rape and sexual assault. Yeah, so it might be a bit tricky for people. People find that really sensitive. I really would rather you didn't watch this video. So the story follows Winston, an outer party member, as he begins to rebel against the party. He starts off by buying a diary or a journal, however you want to call it, and starts writing in it, and that's the first sort of illegal act he starts to do, other than committing thought crime. And then he falls in love with a woman called Julia. Then they engage in an affair, which is very much illegal, and then they decide that they want to do more. They want to join this fabled rebellion group called the Brotherhood. They get recruited into the Brotherhood by a man called O'Brien, who is an inner party member, so he's much higher up than Winston. But O'Brien betrays them. It turns out he's very much loyal to the party. They get captured, tortured, and reprogrammed and re-entered into society for a very, very bleak ending, as Winston discovers a new love for Big Brother. What I liked, or what I loved about the book, is that I found the world incredibly fascinating. I really liked how detailed and well explained the structure of the society was. You could see exactly how the society came to be, because it's so well explained, so thoroughly explained. Orwell, he must have spent ages planning out this whole world. It's crazy. You can see the parallels between the society and ours. For example, obviously the society of Oceania, I think it's called Incel is the society, something like that. The way that the party runs society is very much silencing of people. It's shutting down your own opinion. It's staying with the norms. It's follow us and everything will be fine. But if you don't stick with the norms, if you by any stretch of the margin step outside of the norms, you are a criminal. I was thinking about how you can see like little elements of that in our society. For example, in England, the recently released anti-protest bill, which everyone's very unhappy about, is like another step towards silencing the people. So you can see like little parallels between obviously that the fictional world in the book and things that actually happen here. So it's not like too far removed from reality. Many reviewers on Goodreads complained about the middle portion of the book, in which Winston is reading about how the society came about, how this was built, and people said it gets kind of boring and dry, but I actually preferred that bit. The last third was my favourite, but I preferred that bit because it felt like I was really getting to understand how this society came to be, and because it was less about Winston, because he was just reading the books. You were just kind of like, it's like readingception, like you were reading him reading the book, so you kind of reading the book yourself. And because I had a lot of problems with Winston as a character, so reading that bit felt much better for me. I also absolutely loved the ending. I'm glad that George Orwell went through with it. It's very bleak, it's very realistic, was not stereotypical. Normally you'd expect like a rebellion story, you know, rebelling against government where people fight and it gets gritty and people, you know, power to the people and they win. This is not like that. It shows just how hard and hopeless it can be when you have such a powerful government, a powerful authority in charge. And I really, really like that. I like a bit of bleakness sometimes, so I really, really enjoyed it. However, this is where we get to my main issue with 1984, and that's the characters. This bit feels hard to explain because I don't want to sound like I am dumping on George Orwell himself, because it's my issues with the characters, but he wrote the characters, so how far do you separate character from author? Because when authors write, are they projecting parts of themselves and their beliefs onto the characters? Is that how these characters come about? I don't know whether George Orwell has these issues that I think Winston has, whether he, you know, is sexist and a bit racist, or was, past tense, sorry. So it feels weird to talk about, so I'm just going to kind of just go for it and just know that I'm not trying to be really horrible about George Orwell. I don't know the man, didn't know the man, sorry, so I don't know his real beliefs, but I had issues, so basically it became very quickly clear, very quickly, page 12 of my copy, quickly became clear that Winston is an incel. And I thought I was losing my mind. I had such high hopes for this book going into it because of the reviews. Most reviews are 3 stars or above. None of the reviews mentioned any of the things that I'm going to mention now that I read through on Goodreads, and I had a pretty decent scroll. A lot of reviews were like 5 stars, saying that there was no issues with the book and how inspirational and amazing it is, blah 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 blah. And that's not to dump on the people that really did feel that way, that's fine, but I genuinely thought I was insane. I was like, am I the only one that can see this? Have I just got a weird copy? Does no one else see what's happening? Is it just me? I thought I'd gone insane. Part of the reason why I decided to do this review, to write it all down and share it. So Winston is an incel. If you don't know what an incel is for the term involuntary celibate, which is a hate group that of people that really, really want partners but don't have them or can't get them. There's been a lot of issues around incel groups or incel behaviour. It's become a term coined to usually, I find, to men that really don't like women. You know, it's really bad. And Winston basically follows through the definition of an incel. When he first sees Julia, not first sees her, he's seen her before, but when he first really pays attention to her, they haven't spoken, they're meeting in a mess hall in a dining hall. There's a quote where it says, "He disliked nearly all women, especially the young and pretty ones." So at first I was like, that's a bit weird. Fair enough, you just hate all women. Okay, Winston. And then on page 18, so this is the first time Julia's like properly mentioned, where you really like notice it's her. Okay, and he begins to hate Daydream about her, and it is said he would flog her to death with a rubber truncheon. He would tie her naked to a stake and shoot her full of arrows like Saint Sebastian. He would ravish her and cut her throat at the moment of climax. He hated her because she was young and pretty and sexless, because he wanted to go to bed with her and would never do so. At this point, I was like, Winston? Is everything okay? Because you hate her because you can't have sex with her. You want to rape and kill her. Oh no, rape her while you're killing her. And I was like, and I don't know, am I the only one that sees that as an issue? And it's literally the definition of incel behaviour, when you hate someone because you can't have them, when you hate a woman because you can't have them. He literally imagines raping and murdering her because of this, because she represents all the women he can't have. Okay. And I felt confused because this is our main character. We see the whole world through his eyes and we're supposed to stick with him. This is page 18 of my copy and we're supposed to stick with him for the next, 300 plus pages? I was feeling very much like, not sure if I really want to be honest. And then he sees Julia again one evening. This is before he really knows who she is, and he's gone walking somewhere, and he thinks she's following him, and he thinks that she is part of a spy for the thought police, the people that, you know, kind of arrest you, and, you know, you get taken away by them if you commit a crime, thought crime mainly, against the party. And he seriously thinks about smashing her head in with a cobblestone. But he decides against it because he has tummy ache. So I was like, okay, it's a bit of a leap. You know, you don't think, maybe I should talk to her, maybe I should just ignore her, maybe I shouldn't be super suspicious. He thinks, I'm gonna murder her. And then he's like, oh, my stomach hurts. So he doesn't. So I was, whatever, you know, cool, whatever. And the sort of inceliness of Winston is reinforced when he actually first talks to Julia and she hands him a secret note and they end up meeting, and the possibility of sex becomes an option. He stops being super murdery about her. He stops being like hating her. He goes from literally hating the sight of her to being like, ooh, actually I can't let this opportunity go, because she gives him a note that says she loves him, and because the opportunity to have sex is suddenly open, and suddenly he's like, I guess she's not that bad then. Guess I won't, you know, murder and rape her. That's fine. And I was just, I don't know, I felt like I was going insane. I was like, are you serious? Is this how this romance is going to start? She shows a little bit of interest in you and you're suddenly like... So this brings us to the Julia portion of my review. Another character I have major issues with. I've seen articles, I read loads of articles about this because I was just losing my mind. And I've read articles that describe Julia as the manic pixie dream girl, and it doesn't feel entirely accurate for Julia, but I can see the sentiment behind it, whereas Julia is this perfect woman. She is perfect for Winston, not perfect for everyone, but perfect for Winston. She is very sexually experienced. She is less intelligent than him. You know, she's been rebelling for a while. She's his perfect woman. But in this book, Julia is basically just like a sex doll. She could easily just be a sex doll that is good at orienteering. That's literally her whole personality. You know, she has nothing else going on for her. There's literally nothing else. She's only ever described in terms of her body, really, more or less. And Winston straight up says that she's not clever and not beautiful. He literally said the word, not beautiful. And I was thinking, like, ugh, God forbid she could be anything too good for you, Winston. God forbid she is more intelligent than you. I don't think your ego could handle it. One thing that Winston loves about her, he literally says, the more men you've had sex with, the more I love you. What? Okay. And there's nothing wrong with having a high libido, having lots of sexual experience, enjoying sex. I'm all for that. That's fine if that's what you want to do. You know, it's good. I think we should all be very sex positive, but Julia, that's her entire personality. Her entire personality is that she's 26, Winston's 39, she has lots of sexual experience, and she is just completely infatuated and in love with Winston. Winston is described as a tall, extremely skinny, unhealthy, ulcerated, gross man. And she's just infatuated. She's described as lusty, youthful, ripe. So what does she see in Winston? Like, am I insane? I don't know. I don't know. It's not all about looks, obviously. But Winston is like disgusting. He's not a nice person. At one point, she asks him, "What did you think of me when you first saw me?" And do you know? I'm changing pages. Do you know what Winston says? "I hated the sight of you. I wanted to rape you and then murder you afterwards." This is a direct quote from the book, just saying. You know what her response is? She laughs. She goddamn laughs and jumps on him in an embrace. She thinks it's so witty and funny and hilarious. She thinks, oh, of course you did. You know, am I the only person that if someone said that to me, I would run away as fast as I could and never look back? I would, you don't understand. I was just losing my mind. Oh, and no other reviews mentioned this. Am I the only? Oh, anyway, I can't think about it too deeply because I feel like my hair's gonna fall out and just, yeah. Okay. So, needless to say, I was totally unconvinced by their relationship. Their relationship is based purely on Winston wanting to have sex with her and hating her because he couldn't, and then suddenly liking her because he can. And Julia's sole purpose is to give Winston sex, and that's it. That's the entire relationship. So when it gets towards the end, where they're being tortured, they've been separately, they've been taken away, and Winston is like, "I'll never betray Julia. I love her." No, you don't love her. Love is supposed to be unconditional. Your love is conditional. At one point, when Julia is on her period and decides that she doesn't want to have sex with him, he's described as being violently angry. And then later in this sentence about him being violently angry that she can't have sex with him, he says that he feels Julia's body is something he has a right to, direct quote, has a right to. And this was not even that far into the book, and I was, oh my god, yeah. Do I need to explain the problem with that? I don't think I do. Okay. And later, in a few sentences later, he does come around to it like, oh, well, I guess if you were married, you kind of had to put up with periods all the time. You know? Fair enough. Like, oh, well done, Winston, for doing the bare minimum and recognising that women have periods. Not all women. Some women have periods each month. Some people in relationships have one person, sometimes two people, that have periods. Well done, Winston, recognising that. So I mentioned some of the words used already that to describe women in this book as well, and I had a huge issue with this. Obviously the word lusty is used a few times to describe women. Was it firm and ripe at one point? Like, ugh, I hate that. Describing women bodies as firm and ripe, it's like, it just feels weird, like you're not a nectarine. And it's always men describing women that way. I just don't get it. There was one point where he describes women as being in full bloom, and I just didn't know what that meant, and I just didn't want to know. Full bloom. And it felt creepier because women in this book aren't called women, they're called girls. So at one point Winston is looking at some girls, and he describes some girls as being in full bloom. So I was like, is he looking at children? And I felt confused. And I realised as the book went on that actually that is just how women are described. They're always described as girls. I found a PDF of this. I did have a physical copy. I had the audiobook and I had a PDF copy because I started off with just the audiobook and I was getting so wound up that I needed to be able to mark down my annotations and thoughts. So I found a PDF for it online for free because you can literally search 1984 George Orwell and the PDF comes up. I'll try and find it and link it in the description of this video. I started annotating on that, but then you can't really flip through a PDF the way you can a physical book, and I like physical books better, so I ended up buying a physical copy and spending money on this, and yeah, flipping through and having the physical annotations as well. But on the PDF, I controlled F'd and I searched the term girl to see how often it comes up. The term girl comes up, let me check, 78 times in the entire text, and maybe only 10 of those are used to actually describe children. The rest of the time is used to describe grown-ass women. And I was like, cool, that's really irritating. And after a while, it just got super irritating. I also, just for comparison, looked at the term boy, and the term boy was used 29 times, and I literally clicked through them all, and it was only ever used to describe Winston when he's talking about him being a little boy, when it's just used to describe actual children, or when it's someone saying old boy, as in like, how you doing, old boy? You know, like friendly English term, like two men, like, oh, old boy. That was used. So that kind of added to my irritation. Also, one thing I forgot to even write in my notes that I had to quickly scribble on a post-it note, which I'm going to read a quote from the book, is that at one point, so on page 164 of my copy, so if you get this copy, you'll know what page I'm talking about. So, at one point, Julia and Winston have found a secret place where they can carry out their affair and, meet up and stuff. And Julia gets fined by some makeup on the black market and a dress, because the standard uniform for everyone in the outer party is like overalls and like dungarees, I guess, or boiler suits, I don't know. And that's it. Women don't wear makeup. Women don't indulge in their appearance. Neither do men. Men don't indulge in their appearance either. Everyone kind of looks the same. So, but Julia's found some makeup on the black market and put on a dress. So Winston says, with just a few dabs of colour in the right places, she's become not only very much prettier, but above all, far more feminine. Okay, and then Winston's all like, whew, about the whole thing. And she's got perfume on as well, oh my god. And he says, "Scent too?" And she says, "Yes, dear, scent too. And do you know what I'm going to do next? I'm going to get hold of a real woman's frock from somewhere and wear it instead of these bloody trousers. I'll wear silk stockings and high heel shoes. In this room I'm going to be a woman, not a party comrade." And I heavily highlighted that. I read the bits that are in pink. I heavily highlighted that because I was like, oh, I don't have silk stockings. Am I not a woman? I don't wear heels. Am I not a woman? I don't really wear dresses unless it's hot or unless I'm going outside sometimes, which we don't do anymore because lockdown. Am I not a woman? So I don't think I need to explain the issues with that kind of terminology, or that just, you know, if you know, you know. Okay. My final issue was around Winston's wife, Catherine. Winston is married, but they are separated. You never get divorced in this thing, but you can like move apart and be separated. But he reflects on his marriage to his wife, Catherine, who they weren't in love. There's no such thing as being in love in this society. There's no such thing as friends in this society. So it's just someone that I guess they just decided to get married. And it's the way he describes having sex with her that I find really disturbing and troubling. Pretty damn disturbing, to be honest. Because one of the aims of the party is to eradicate the sex instinct. They don't want people to form allies or loyalties through sexual pleasure, through sexual intimacy, through any sort of intimate relationship. So they're trying to eradicate sex. So people are raised to believe that sex is dirty. Sound familiar? But anyway, sex is dirty and gross and ugh, and you only do it to have babies, and only if you're married. So obviously that doesn't really apply to anything other than a very cis binary relationship. Anyway, heterosexual relationship, I mean. So he describes like that. It says that he could have made the marriage work. He could have stayed with her if it wasn't for the sex. And he describes how tense she is when they had sex, how it felt like she was simultaneously pushing and pulling him away, and how he found it highly embarrassing and horrible. And I felt really bad because she obviously didn't want to do it. There's something borderline sexual assaulty about that, where she's obviously been raised to believe that sex is bad, that it's gross, it's something she doesn't want to do, and she feels like she has to because it's her duty. And I felt really bad for her, but the way Winston talks about her is awful, like really bad. And she's spoken about so negatively by Winston and Julia in this book. Yeah, and the way, yeah, it was quite disturbing to read, and I felt really bad about that. I feel like no acknowledgement that she's just a product of the society that they're in, that she's a victim to the society that they're in, and that maybe it wasn't pleasant for her either. It was never acknowledged, and sex in general was always talked about in this book as sort of a male pleasure, a male impulse, as something that men can't control. And that's why prostitution, even though it's illegal, is kind of encouraged in the book for men. That's why they have like a porn magazine industry that only women work in, and they sell it to the pros, but only the women can work in it because men can't control themselves and they'll be easily corrupted by the material, as if women have absolutely no desire to have sex, as if women are only there for men to have sex with, for pleasure. So yeah, I feel like I ran out of steam of things to talk about. I was just losing my mind. I was losing my mind. I gave this book 2.5 stars on Goodreads, and that's because I think 2.5 stars is half of 5, right? Half marks because the world is sick. It's cool, interesting, the politics, the parallels, well done, Orwell, for making such an interesting, fascinating, detailed world. Minus half marks because Winston is an incel, because there's sexism, and I haven't even mentioned the mild racism. I just realised, yeah. So there's some uncomfortable terminology. For example, someone's lips are described as being negroid. Didn't like that, kind of in my skin crawl. An Asian looking man is described as yellow quite a few times. Offensive. So there's like things like that are littered in there. So yeah, minus half marks for the Winston being an incel, sexism and racism. There you go. This video's been so long. I just had so much to say. Oops, sorry. I had so much to say. So yeah, I ran out of steam for this book. Do I think you should read it? Sure, if you want to. If you value this book, then that's great. I certainly had a wild ride reading it. Did I enjoy it? You know what? Not really. I didn't. Not really. So yeah. So that's my review. If you want to read it, go for it. It's just my opinion, my thoughts. But anyway, happy reading, and I'll see you around.